Hey everyone, it's Michelle from the Strong and Simple podcast, and I'm excited to have a conversation with you today about something that has gained a lot of traction and a lot of buzz out here on these social media podcast fitness streets. And I do want you to know that today during this episode, we are going to be discussing calories. We're going to be discussing calorie manipulation. We're going to be mentioning weight loss, body recomposition. So I did want to put that out as a disclaimer. So if any of those things are uncomfortable for you to listen to or triggering for you to listen to, then please skip this episode. We're going to be talking about macro counting or macro tracking or the other number of ways that coaches and programs will call the manipulation of macronutrients in your diet. And like I said earlier, there's been a lot of buzz around macros. It's like super trendy to talk about macros, and it's especially trendy and portrayed as a non-diet, non-restrictive solution for weight loss. And because there is so much talk right now in January about fat loss and weight loss and things like that, new year, new you, blah, right? You might be feeling a certain way and might be feeling like, you know what? Maybe I do want to try macro counting. Maybe I do want to see if this helps me lose weight. So I want to try to break this down for you in an objective as possible way about what counting macros is, what it involves, and how to get started if that is what you choose for yourself. Excuse me. So I will say that we have some other episodes about macros, and for time on this episode, because it is a mini-sode, I recommend that you go back and listen to episode 2, where Marissa talks about carbohydrates, episode 17, where we give an overview of macronutrients, and then episode 46, where we talk about protein, specifically as like protein in relation to your strength training goals. Because I don't want to, we can't talk about macros without you having an understanding about what macros are. And because this is a mini-sode today, I want to try to be as concise as possible. So we're not going to spend a lot of time going into how amazing each of these macronutrients are for you and all the things that they do. So, when we talk about nutrients, here's the like quick and dirty. All right. When we talk about nutrients, we can talk about nutrients as micronutrients, which are the nutrients that we need for performance in our body in small amounts, like vitamins and minerals. Then we have macronutrients, which our body needs in larger amounts. These are carbohydrates, fats, and proteins. And each of these 3 macronutrients perform essential things for our bodies. Carbohydrates give us energy. Protein helps us repair, rebuild, and recover. Fats help build the cells of our body. Fats can also give energy, but not as efficiently as carbs. It also helps to assist in the absorption of certain vitamins. So all of these macronutrients, these 3 macronutrients, we need them, and we need them in a variety to help our body perform as optimally as possible. Okay. So we want to make sure that we are getting different kinds of fats. We want to make sure we're consuming all of the 9 essential amino acids from our protein sources. And we want to make sure that we're getting a wide variety of foods that provide these macronutrients for us so that we're getting all of our different micronutrients. See how everything kind of works together. And it's really popular and as human beings, we like to categorize things. So this makes a lot of sense to me that we so often are like, oh, avocado's a fat. Oh, bread is a carbohydrate. Oh, yogurt is a protein, right? Where in fact, a yogurt, and depending on what type of yogurt you have and what kind of flavorings are in it, has carbohydrates, has protein, and has fat in it. So we could actually categorize that yogurt as any of those macronutrients. And what's really important about that yogurt is we're also getting all sorts of good things for us, calcium and probiotics, right? That are good for our body. So while it can be really fun and even useful for us as human beings to categorize our food as macros, we also want to try to think about food as being food, and that food item provides for us multiple things in most instances. Okay. So when we are counting macros or tracking macros, essentially we're looking at how our diet is made up, how much of our energy intake, calories, is from protein, how much of our energy intake is from fat, and how much of our energy intake is from carbohydrates. Okay. So I don't want to get too much into like the real minutia that actually really does come with counting and tracking macros. There is a lot of math. There's a lot of weighing. There's a lot of measuring. There is a lot of tracking. There is a lot of thinking about the food that you're going to be eating. Okay. So to put that out there, I think it's also important to preface that if you are tracking or counting macros as a way to lose weight, you are essentially manipulating calories. Macro counting for weight loss is another way to restrict your calories without necessarily paying attention to calories, because instead you're going to be tracking and manipulating grams of macronutrients. Okay. But if you are losing weight, I think this is really important for you to understand when you're deciding if you're going to go this route. If you're losing weight while tracking macros, you are in a calorie deficit. Okay. Weight loss occurs when more energy is used than what is consumed over time. Energy is calories. Calories give us energy. Okay. So when we're talking about macro counting, we're talking about manipulating our calorie intake into certain bundles throughout the day. So we're thinking about getting a certain amount of percentage of our diet from protein, a certain percentage of our diet from carbohydrates, and a certain percentage of our diet from fats. This is because each macronutrient provides a certain amount of calories per gram of that macronutrient. So 1 gram of protein is 4 calories. 1 gram of carbohydrates is 4 calories, and 1 gram of fat is 9 calories. Okay. So when you eat something with 30 grams of protein in it, 30 times 4 is 120 calories. You now have gotten 120 calories from protein. Cool, right? And so this is how this all relates to calories in and calories out into that principle, right? So you're going to be thinking about, you're going to need to know for your particular goal, whether it's lose weight, gain weight, maintain weight, you're going to need to know what your calorie range is for macro counting. Yep. You're going to need to know how active you are. Are you lightly active? Are you moderately active? Are you heavily active? And then you need to know what your goals are. Okay. The RDA gives us percentage ranges for how much calories we should be getting from each macronutrient. So carbohydrates is 45 to 65% of our daily diet should come from carbohydrates. 10 to 35% of our daily diet should come from protein. 20 to 35% of our daily diet should come from fats. Okay? When we are counting macros, tracking macros, we're simply figuring out how many calories we're going to take. So we have that total calorie range. So let's just for simplicity use 2,000. Okay. You're going to eat 2,000 calories a day. You're going to figure out how many of those calories are coming from protein, how many of those calories are coming from carbohydrates, how many of those calories are coming from fats. And if anybody was around for the zone diet, I want to say that was like the mid 90s to mid 2000-ish when the zone diet was popular. And that was 40, 30, 30 percentage breakdown of macros, 40% carbs, 30% protein, 30% fats. That seems to be a really optimal and fairly sustainable way for folks to be getting all of their macros, their calories, their macros. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can see my hands going all over the place. When I'm talking about numbers, I can't help it but do that. So you're going to need to decide your macro split, your percentage, your number, how many grams, how many calories of these macros you're getting from food in your day based on your goals. So the one macro that I do like to focus on with my clients who are strength training is protein. And if you are working with somebody or you're doing this yourself, if you decide to track macros, you're probably going to figure out your protein target first. And then from there, you can figure out your fats and your carbs. And again, there's a lot of math that goes into this. There are like macro calculators that you can use. There's also like charts and things. And the math isn't like super like complex. It's simple. There's just like a lot of steps. So it can be helpful to have somebody to help you with this, but we're not going to go into all of that today. Because it'll take too long for me to kind of explain it. If that's something that you think would be helpful, let me know and maybe I'll do a part 2 of this. Okay. So you're going to figure out your protein range. You're going to figure out how many grams per kilogram of body weight. So once you know your weight, you're then going to divide that. And if you're in America, you use pounds. So just divide that by 2.2. And then you're going to decide how much protein you want to take in. The recommended 2.9-ish, depending on how active you are and what your goals are. Okay. It's a wide range. Most of the time, the folks that I work with are eating not a ton of protein and are fairly new to strength training. So we do start with our protein target. And I always do a range with people that falls kind of towards like the 1.8-ish, 1.6, 1.8. And again, it's very personalized for people based on what they're currently doing. And then we try to hit a target and then can see how that impacts their training. Okay. So you figure out how many grams of protein you're going to take each day based on kind of that range that I just spoke about. Let's say you figure out that you're going to have, that you need 150 grams of protein. You're then going to multiply that by 4, because remember, there's 4 calories in a gram of protein. And then you're going to subtract that from your total calorie amount. And that's going to tell you how much you have left over for fat and carb calories. I know I said I wasn't going to go into the equations. I couldn't help myself. And then you can kind of suss out. Okay. So once you have those ranges based on those calculations, you then get into the real job of having to track. And yes, there are plenty of apps out there that help you track your macros. But if you're going to really aim to hit that, like eat whatever, as long as it falls in the macro, you're going to have to weigh and measure your food. Right? You're going to want to be as exact as possible, as consistently as possible. So then you can actually see if those ranges are working for your goals. You can't make adjustments to things unless your data collection is as accurate as possible. This works really well for folks who already have experience with how food feels for their body, already has a pretty healthy relationship with food. And for somebody who has very specific, in the world of precision nutrition, where I have my certification through, one of my certifications through, we call it level 2 and level 3 goals. So these are physique competitors, bodybuilders, power lifters, right? Paying attention, doing macro counting can work really well for these folks, but also these level 2 and level 3 people with these very specific like physique and performance goals, it's for a short term. Most of those people are not hyper focused tracking macros every single day all the time. They do it for their competition, and then they like take a break and like refeed themselves. Okay. So most people who are looking for general wellness and or weight loss or fat loss don't need to really hyper focus at this level of weighing and measuring and tracking their macros. I will say that when you are paying attention to macros instead of just calories, you are able to gain some better information, especially if you're strength training or endurance training, of how the food is making you feel over time. Like, are you continuing to progress? Are you sleeping well? Do you have energy? Are you so hungry all the time, right? All of those questions can help you determine what's working for you in your life in terms of nutrition and then make adjustments as needed. However, you can also do this without this, I'm going to say, high level tracking, and focus on like hitting like real exact numbers. So overall, macro counting works especially well for folks who have like more extreme physique chain goals or performance-based goals, as well as folks who have, if it's for a short term, or to like just gain some information about how things feel in your body. There are, for folks focusing on, most folks for general wellness, focusing in on habits to incorporate in your life in a slow, practiced way is probably going to lead towards the more sustainable results most people are looking for without this like minutia of macro manipulation and tracking. And it's like a lot of prep that goes into it. People, so with this information, I hope that you are now able to make the decision for yourself if counting macros is going to be useful for you and your goals. If you do feel like it is the route for you to take, I do highly recommend you find a coach who is knowledgeable and compassionate about macro counting, but also knowledgeable about the signs of potential disordered eating and unhealthy habits that can come up from this level of tracking. So I hope this was helpful for you. I'm hoping to do kind of a series on some of these more popular diets, lifestyles. And I know Marissa and I have given some like deep dives. But if there's something that you want us to focus in on, either for a mini-sode or like a real deep dive, please email us at strongandsimplepodcast@gmail.com. We would love to hear from you. And if this episode was useful for you, Sharing it with your friends, with your family helps other people find the podcast. Leaving us a review always helps, and we appreciate that so much. And if anything, I just appreciate you being here to listen. Thank you for being here, either just for this episode or all our episodes. We hope that there is something for you to learn and take away and apply to your daily life right away. All right. So friends, with that, have an amazing day. And until next time.